Hello, folks. I'm Nick Bernardo, your host of MyGovWatch Live, the B2G Roundtable. If you're east of the Rocky Mountains here in the U.S., good afternoon. Good morning to those out west, and hello to anyone joining us from the far corners of the earth or watching online in the future. Today's Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. This series is brought to you by MyGovWatch. With a curated white glove approach, MyGovWatch delivers leads in more than 200 industries at double the rate of free government tools and at a fraction of the cost of legacy websites. Big government contracts do not start with a solicitation, but all roads lead to one, and your budget for hearing about RFPs does not have to be thousands of dollars per year. Start your 14-day free trial today. 2024 is almost behind us, folks. And I, for one, cannot believe I'm saying that. I don't know how you all feel. I don't know who else may have kids or maybe newly 50 years old like I am this year, but it sure does seem like life moves a little bit more quickly when there are kids that become teenagers. And now that I'm in my 50s, it just seems like the clock is moving more quickly than in previous years. We've sort of been increasingly having these sessions be less and less formal. You can see my background picture, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. This is an entirely audience-driven event. There's a handful of people on this session who I might have spoken with yesterday who might have indicated an interest in asking a question. Anyone who does not already use our website, MyGovWatch, who asks a question on this session is qualified for a 30-day free trial of MyGovWatch just for participating. So just a quick note, we always try to do something that's topical for the time of the year it is. Obviously, the holidays are coming up. I celebrate Christmas. We'll talk about any other holidays that people want to celebrate or talk about on this session. But raise your hand if you go back to the 1980s, meaning, did you open presents as a child in the 1980s? If so, raise your hand. What you're looking at in my background here, this is an actual photo of the Bernardo family Christmas tree when I was probably 10 years old. So this goes back exactly 40 years to 1984. And I'm going to ask you when I bring you on to not only talk about, what you do and why you're interested in government contracts, but I might ask you for a holiday anecdote. It can be Christmas. It can be anything. We celebrate Christmas, so I'm just going to point to a couple of things in the photo. Again, this is an actual photo of the tree when I was about 10 years old, probably 1984. Over my left shoulder, you can see a little bit of shag carpet. So that's definitely authentic 1980s shag carpet on the steps leading up to the second floor of my home when I was a kid. And then over my right shoulder is a box, the large box at the bottom. I'm just going to tell a quick story. So I discovered certain truths about Santa Claus. And I won't say what those are because this will be on YouTube later, and who knows if my kids will watch it, or at least the one who is still a believer. I found under a tarp in the basement a G.I. Joe battle tank that took like 8 D batteries, but that actually would ride across the shag carpet after I put the batteries in. So that's probably the G.I. Joe battle tank there in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. So I'm going to ask you to share any anecdote if you'd like. Also, anything that you might be looking forward to, either travel for the holidays or something special that's coming up this month. So I see those of you who are children of the 80s. What I'd like to do now is ask, does anyone have a question to sort of start us off? Because I do have someone who I'm going to be bringing on as a co-host light in this session, someone by the name of Carmela Hornbeck, and she's going to be joining us momentarily. But please raise your hand if you would like to start with a question. And I see a couple of hands up. I'm hoping, Ray, Christine, your hand is still up. I'm hoping, Ray, your hand is back up. So, Christine, I'm going to bring you in as a panelist. And we're going to talk to Christine. And we'll have Christine here momentarily. And by the way, if you do ask a question, we're just going to leave you in the panel. We've been doing that, and it seems to be beneficial because then you're just sort of part of the conversation generally. And unless you have to jump off the session, which you certainly can, um, you can just join us through the entire conversation. So we don't seem to be getting Christine. And Christine, we may get you. Ray, we're going to bring you in. Let's try Ray. And we have Ray.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Ray. Welcome. Welcome to MyGovWatch Live. What do you do and where do you join us from?
Well, I'm from Los Angeles and we have a warehouse and we do a lot of kitting and shipping and fulfillment, business to business, business to consumer. And we'd like to do some B2G work with you guys.
Okay, well, there's a lot of opportunities out there. Any Christmas or other holiday anecdotes or things that you're looking forward to?
Well, I will say, Christmas has always been a tough time because I lost my brother when he was 13, but Christmas always reminds me of the times where he opened his gifts. And when he opened his gifts, it was joy for everybody. And I think that's really the Christmas spirit and the holiday spirits. It's just like the joy that we all get from giving as well. Maybe more from giving than even receiving. So
That's a beautiful sentiment, Ray. Thank you for sharing. And so talk to us a little bit about like what have you done so far in business development for GovCon? Like what have you done this year and what are you hoping to do next year?
well, this year we're trying to get an understanding of it. That's first of all. We just don't know how. We know we can do the work. We just don't know how to engage with government people and contracts and how to go about doing that. And in doing some research, it seems so complicated. And so it's like a rabbit hole that a language that I don't even know speak. So that's what we're trying to understand is the language of how to get a government bid.
Okay. And remind me, are you interested solely in federal contracts? Or are you interested in state and local as well?
State and local as well.
Okay. I'm going to start answering the question, but at the same time, I'm going to bring Carmela on with us. And after we sort of go through things, she can introduce who she is and what she does. And Carmela is someone I've gotten to know just a little bit over the last few months. So Carmela is going to join us. But I would just tell you this. The terminology involved in government contracts is a one-time learning effort. And there are a lot of terms and buzzwords, but I would say that for the most part, a lot of the buzzwords you're going to hear, there tends to be a federal lexicon of terminology with federal contracts that apply to federal contracts only.
Mm.
And then at the state and local level, there is still some terminology, but it's just not nearly as expansive as the federal vocabulary around contracting. And so that would be a good segue to introducing Carmela Hornbeck. Hi, Carmela, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Welcome to MyGovWatch Live. And just for the
Appreciate it.
benefit of those who are in the audience and joining us today, why don't you just talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, sure. So, name Carmela Hornbeck. I'm a former contracting officer for the United States Air Force. And I have since then started my own business, reaching out and helping finding small businesses that aren't familiar with the government procurement process and mentoring and coaching them in that process based on my experience as a former contracting officer.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question, Carmela, before we go any further. Any holiday anecdotes or anything that you're looking forward to in the upcoming holidays?
Yeah, so my husband's still active duty Air Force, and he's been, my daughters and I recently moved to North Carolina in August, but my husband had to stay back and finish out his enlistment in Idaho. So we've been separated a little bit, and he's coming Saturday, and he'll be here for Christmas. So I'm super excited our family will be together.
Well, that's fantastic. And I say this tongue in cheek, but we're here in New Jersey. So if he hears anything about the drones, can you please tell him to pass it along? So I wonder if you agree with what I just said to Ray, and that is, do you agree with me that federal terminology is a little bit more, there's more of it, it's more voluminous, and federal terminology seems to be a little bit more important than state and local terminology, where there is still some terminology and processes and things that just terms of art, but I wonder if you agree with that and to what extent.
For sure, I absolutely agree. And you got to kind of forgive me because I kind of grew up in that terminology. So to me, it's just second nature at this point. But yeah, there are a lot of terminologies, and then we hear vendors say certain things, and then we're like, well, no, don't say that. You gotta say it this way, or you know, some of our customers and our end users say things, and we're like, that's not the right terminology. And so yes, 100% agree with you on
For sure. And so Ray, I would just and maybe you can respond to this. I would just encourage you to consider that there's really two tracks for you. There's the federal track and there's the state and local track. And just don't confuse the two. Think of them as two different things, even though it's all government. Are
Gotcha.
there any opportunities that you've looked at for, bidding on things related to what you do?
We haven't actually had an opportunity to bid yet. I don't think we've quite met the qualifications. I think there's a, I don't know. I don't think I think you have to fill out a form that I feel like we don't have certifications or something, but maybe not. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I feel like,
So have
yeah.
you done any research to know whether or not you are a small business as it relates to federal contracts?
We're a small business for sure. We're a small
Okay,
business.
and that's something that has a really specific meaning with federal contracts. So you verified that?
I haven't. I don't even know how to do that.
Okay. So Carmelo, do you happen to know, and it always gets complicated even before we start talking about it. So if I'm not mistaken, are you a 3PL?
Yes.
Okay, and just for the audience members who don't know what that means, can you just describe what that means?
It's basically a logistical warehouse. We do fulfillment, business to business, business to consumer, warehouse, but we do handwork, which is like packing a backpack full of goods, 20 different items in a backpack and then sending those off. Yeah, so that's mostly what we do.
Okay. Carmel, I'm going to put you on the spot and I'll fill in anything that I'm thinking that maybe you may think to say some things. I'll just fill in. Can you talk to us a little bit about NAICS codes and how people can have different NAICS codes and
Sure.
be small in different NAICS codes or not small?
Yes. So, but for Ray's purposes, it sounds like he's selling mostly products, correct?
We're selling services. What we want to do is we want to like get a contract from the government to, I don't know, pack up 100 first aid kits that are going to be sent off somewhere, or maybe there's some boxes full of I don't know, personal items that are sent to all the soldiers, and we're putting shavers and shaving cream and soap, and we're putting things together. That's what the kind of work we want to do, kitting work or assembly work.
Okay, but the end purpose of the government would be to send those kits,
Yeah,
which
so
the
then we
kits
would
would
send
be
it to them. Yeah.
considered a commodity. So NAICS codes, you can either have NAICS codes that are commodities or products, or NAICS codes that are services. So the commodities, NAICS codes, or product service codes, NAICS codes are by employee size. So if you have, it's not a catch-all, but if you have like less than 500 employees for
Yep.
products that you're delivering to the government, you're
Right.
probably a small business under most NAICS codes, if not all, for products. But services go by annual revenue. So off the top of my head, for like logistic services, I'm not sure what the annual revenue would be, but I'm going to guess it's in the upper 20 millions, if not 34 million-ish.
Yeah, and we've seen small business thresholds with federal NAICS codes, $36 million. So Ray, as
Right.
one takeaway from this session, you should identify all of the federal NAICS codes that would be related to your business. And then
Okay.
your Google search term would be Small Business Administration Size Standards Table. And then what you would then do is just know, it's just a general knowledge. You want to understand if you are doing a fulfillment contract, that's a service contract, what is that NAICS code? And are you a small business under that NAICS code? Because you could be a small business under NAICS code A and a large business under NAICS code B. So that's something you should know fundamentally about federal contracting.
Okay. That's great to know. And we are a small business. We're probably a $5 to $6 million is what our revenues we're looking at.
And
So
so I suspect that if you're mainly doing services, you're probably going to be small in either standard, whether it's number of employees on one hand or revenue on the other hand.
exactly.
So yeah, and so there's lots of federal opportunities involving logistics. Are you interested in being a prime contractor or a subcontractor, and have you given any thought to either?
That maybe that's a good question. What's the difference between a prime contractor and a subcontractor, for the government? I mean, we're interested in both. I mean, I'd love to be a prime and just go directly with the government, but certainly if there's a company that has some logistical aspects of what they're doing with the government and they just need that part done, we're happy to do that as well.
Yeah, and so Carmela, do you want to talk about maybe experiences you've had with primes and subs or those issues?
So as a, contracting officer, we deal only with the primes. But I mean, subcontractors do come on site at certain times, and if their past performance isn't up to par, then we go directly to the prime. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the prime's fault. So there's a lot more risk involved with the prime being a prime contractor, but then there's also a lot more reward too. But as far as the government, they are working directly with the prime.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ray, you should consider this. I mean, you could have two different strategies with federal contracting. You could have one strategy where you're just looking for bid opportunities and looking to meet people to win prime contracts, maybe that are set aside for small business. And set aside for small business is a term of art, and that's something you can look into. But you could also have a subcontracting strategy because there are some benefits there. That's a private transaction. In other words, if one of your concerns is all of the terminology and all of the rules and regulations around being a government contractor, now you still have what's called flow down provisions, meaning if you're doing business with a prime who's doing business with a federal agency, you still have to follow their contract terms as a prime, you'd have to do a lot of the things that are in their contracts. It's called flow down provisions. But by the same token, it's just not the same dynamic. It'll feel more like a commercial private transaction where you're just dealing with another party. And I suspect that for what you do, there are probably lots of opportunities for fulfillment and things around 3PL where you would not be a prime. And using our site would show you what those opportunities are. And here's what's really interesting about that. And Carmela, you may add to this, but when there's a prime solicitation and it's due January 15th, it's already too late for you, right? Maybe you can submit a bid as a prime. Probably you're not going to win. But what you can do is you can find out through various means who did win and then go pitch them in 3 to 6 months when they have to fulfill their subcontracting requirements.
Right. That's a great idea, strategy.
It's a very common one. I'd like to say I made it up, but it's a very common strategy that people use in pursuing federal dollars is say, well, look, maybe I'll be a prime, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just try to get some work as a subcontractor as well. Other thoughts on that, Carmela?
No, that was very good. Yeah.
Carmela, I do have a question in terms of like newbies. So we are a newbie and I'm learning. Part of what's happening is I'm trying to learn. What percentage of your contracts that you awarded were sort of the group that you always go to versus newbies? I mean, is it 10%? What are the chances of me as a new business getting in with you and saying, hey, when you're a contractor, we do this? Or would you go like, I've got 10 people that do the same thing, so I'm not going to even look at your bid?
No, we always want competition.
Oh, good.
Always.
Okay.
Especially around small businesses. I mean, it is a lot more work for me not to compete, and it's a lot more work for me and a lot more annoying for me to go to a large business. So we are always looking to compete, and yeah, don't hesitate on that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I just want to take that a step further, and that's been our experience as well, Carmela. I want to share my screen if I can figure that. Zoom released a newer interface. Let me just see if I can do it real quick. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat, but we have a press release page and we put a press release out last March or this past March, March 18th, and we released a survey. So if you, well, I'll put this in the chat, but if you go to this page, there is a form you can fill out here to get a survey. This is a free document. You just have to put your information in there.
Yeah.
And this survey that we did, we sent out an email to tens of thousands of government people, and we found out that nearly 30% of government buyers typically hire suppliers they never heard of.
That's great.
And that shocked us a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't very large contracts where they already know who they want to pick in the bid process. That happens all the time too. But for contracts that are not necessarily massive contracts, smaller buys, the smaller the buy, the more likely you're just competing with anyone else off the street, and the buyer doesn't necessarily, there's not always an insider, quote unquote, for every government contract, although that does happen. So I just want to stop there and have anyone comment on that who would like to. And I'm going to put this to the whole audience. So that is certainly a report, Ray, that I would encourage you to download and just read through it. And you might get some real insights there about how important is incumbency, or how important is even name recognition. Because in this report, we found that if you have good commercial references and you have a good offer at the right price, there's no reason why you cannot win, particularly state and local contracts or subcontracted federal dollars.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to just stop my share. And I have a hand raised here from Susanna. Ray, do you want to stay with us?
Sure, I'm here.
Okay, we're going to bring Susanna on. And Susanna's coming in. Hello, Susanna. We just need your audio.
Hold on. Apologies. Third
No
meeting of the
worries.
day. I'm getting this.
That's okay. Welcome to MyGovWatch Live. What do you do and where are you joining us from?
I have, I'm the owner and creative director of a full service creative agency. I'm joining you from New York City, not far from Jersey. Saw those drones, by the way. And I have a son in the Civil Air Patrol, dying to be in the Air Force. So he's had a lot to say about that. And I do currently work with government, local and federal. I'm a subprime on those. I have also some of the some diversity certifications, and I'm waiting for a few more because of the kind of work that we do. We work a lot with engineers, architects, financial industry. Recently worked with the DEP in New York City, and currently working with Department of State on the federal level. And I guess I'm here because I enjoy being a subprime. You asked somebody previously if they want to be a prime or a sub. Because we are a creative agency, the kind of work we do, that's our sweet spot, is to be the sub on a lot of these projects. And where I struggle is, how do I continue developing relationships? Like, how do I find out who won the bid on the federal level? I've been struggling to find ways to network in that sphere.
Boy, there's a lot to that answer. And by the way, anything fun coming up this month?
Oh, well, we're Jewish, so we have Hanukkah.
That's coming up as well?
That's right on Christmas Day,
Yeah,
which we're also celebrating with my partner's family. And then I'm from the Soviet Union, so New Year's is a huge thing. So we just have a lot coming up, and I'm looking forward to all of that.
Well, that's fantastic. And by the way, my 14-year-old son was doing Civil Air Patrol for one year.
Okay.
And I think he's moved on to other things, but it seems to be a lot of fun.
Oh, he loves it. They get to fly drones. They're doing the FEMA emergency training. He's in JFK in the Port Authority building. So he just loves being in that environment. And his goal is Air Force Academy, but we're also realistically looking at ROTC just in case that doesn't pan out.
Well, I mentioned this to Carmela. if your son hears of any intelligence about the drones, please pass it along.
I want to know. I was next to Newark the other day, and I was driving right behind a drone. The thing just dipped down, came back up. I was like, okay, that's what we're doing
Well,
now.
I don't know if anyone else agrees with this. I tend to think that the average person who kind of glances out their window or is driving and sees something could not tell a drone from the Death Star in Star Wars. I'm not sure, like, if people are accurately identifying drones, and I think that's part of it, but that's really an aside. So you like being a subcontractor, and
I do.
you come to this webinar. Does that mean you don't have all the answers yet? Because someone who's already working for government dollars probably has a lot of answers.
But I don't have all of them.
That's true.
Oh,
That's true.
I think I'm always learning, always looking for new opportunities. It's such a it's a whole universe. And what you said, federal and city, I haven't done anything on the state level, but federal and city are two different beasts. And I find federal incredibly overwhelming. I recently met with the procurement person from the US Coast Guard because I do want to do some DoD work, and she sent me this long list of what to do, how to do, how to. I'm still trying to figure out all the acronyms, honestly. So even though I do the work as a sub, I'm not in the, I'm not really, it's more of a commercial type of situation. So
Well, yeah, and that's exactly the way I was describing it to Ray. And Carmela,
yeah.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, and I'll fill in as well, anything that you're aware of related to USA spending and anything that you're aware of related to OSTABUs at the department level, and how Susanna might be able to use those resources.
Well, I would honestly, if you're tracking these opportunities from either the MyGovWatch
Mhm.
app or through SAM.gov, the POCs are listed. Contact the POCs and ask for a debrief. Just because you're a sub doesn't mean you're not an interested party. So you can ask for a debrief, and then they'll give you the awardee and the amount it was awarded in and when it was awarded.
That
I
is
That's what's been
actually
happening.
That is fantastic advice. And we've had a lot of people on these sessions, Carmela. I've never had anyone say that a sub is an interested party and they could get a debrief. Has that happened to you in your
Oh yeah,
capacity? Yeah, that's
yeah,
fantastic. That's great advice.
yeah.
that,
Any interested party can protest too. Probably shouldn't say that, but can.
oh,
It's possible. And then also FPDS&G, so Federal Procurement Data System Next Generation. That's it's your taxpayer money is being spent, so anything becomes public knowledge once it's awarded. So you can track those solicitations through FPDS and see who the awardee is.
And it's my understanding that FPDS is going away at some undetermined date. Um, I think all the data, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of the data in FPDS, which is a really clunky data system, isn't it all in usaspending.gov?
It might be. I can't answer that honestly at this point. I'll do some research and get back to you on that.
Yeah, but so certainly you can look into FPDS, but usaspending.gov, Susanna, that's going to be a jumping off point to see who is winning contracts in your NAICS codes. And it will identify the companies that are winning, and then you can, start reaching out to those companies because it'll show you. Now, it's not real-time data. It's not going to be like, here's who won a contract that was awarded last week. But some of these contracts can be several years in duration. So you could certainly use that website, for example, to find contact names of people who won contracts a year ago, because you'll see dollars that are being spent in USA spending for contracts that were won 2 years ago, but these very same companies will be bidding on something else in 2025. And really what you want is the relationship.
basically that's where I am right now, is in the relationship building part of the year.
Yeah, so you have debriefings at the RFP level.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
great. That's great advice. USA spending would be a second. Another would be the OSTABUs, the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. So every federal department has OSTABU liaisons, and those folks may directly tell you right? Who should you be networking with? Because they may have primes contacting them saying, look, we can't find anybody to do certain activities under our contract. Can you help us? Do you have, is it a woman-owned business?
So I have, it's, I don't know if I don't remember if the federal level has WB, DB, and SB, as well as LGBTBE, which is mostly for commercial. That hasn't, the government doesn't really care about that.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. Well, actually, our Chamber of Commerce is working on that right now to get that on the federal level.
So at a minimum, you're a small business and a woman-owned business itself. So that has currency.
Yeah, and I'm not certified on the federal level yet. I'm right now going through the New York City and Port Authority certification, and my next stop is working with SBA and trying to figure out that.
You happen to be located where you have not only federal certifications, which are national, but city certifications as well as state certifications.
Yeah.
So you have all three to manage. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, it's not just city, because within the city, we have multiple ones, like Port Authority, who I do work with on the city agency side. I don't understand, but I'm doing it. You still need the city certification, and then you still need, like, I've worked with MTA, the train system, and they have their own separate certification system. So
Yeah, that's an
it's a
important point. So
Yeah.
being the thing that you're claiming to be is typically not good enough.
No,
You have to be certified, right? And one certification typically will not carry over to other jurisdictions.
They do have fast track, but you still have to go through the process where it'll pull in the documents, but you still have to reapply for all of them.
Sure.
So, but my goal again is to start the federal certification soon, and it's been confusing. I just recently got some stuff back from SAM.gov that I need to give them more paperwork. And they have like a unique code, and then there's also the registering, and those are two separate things. So I recently found out, just taking that one step by step and seeing.
Yeah, it can be painful. Carmela, can I ask you, do you have much experience with FOIA requests being on the other side, on the government side?
I don't. At one point, somebody asked me for a FOIA request and I sent it over to legal, and that was that for me personally.
Yeah, so the last thing to add to your list, Susanna, would be doing federal FOIAs. But here's the challenge with federal FOIAs. Never, and this is not a political statement I'm about to make. This cuts across multiple administrations over a period of 15 years that we've been doing FOIA requests. And by the way, that's a lot of what we do at MyGovWatch. We do FOIA requests so that users can be anonymous. So we are the ones asking for the information. If you have an account with us, you can be anonymous. We try to get you the information. Never let anyone tell you the federal government is transparent, because if it's one thing to get a debriefing, and I do agree with Carmela, it's likely that if you get someone on the phone, they'll agree to do that. That's easy. But as soon as you put in writing FOIA request, federally, it seems to be a little bit of a brick wall. So as a last resort, you could do FOIA requests against specific contracts and just ask for lists of bidders, for example, right? And you may see that anytime there's a contract that you're interested in as a sub in particular, look for industry days for that kind of thing. Sometimes industry days are announced on SAM.gov. Sometimes they might have a Zoom call where people are announcing who they are, right, for a pre-bid event or a solicitation. That's another way to get contacts with prime contractors for federal contracts. And then a FOIA request would be like sort of your last resort just for networking purposes, although you can try that.
I'm sorry, can you tell me how that is spelled? I'm not familiar.
So it refers to the Freedom of Information Act. And
Okay.
if you just start Googling around, you'll see that there's a lot of rules around it. But you can ask for things like lists of bidders. So let's say there was a contract from last summer and it's been awarded. You can send a letter or an email to the right person and say, this is a FOIA request. I would like a list of all the bidders for this contract. And they may give it to you, or it may take 6 months and they may tell you no at the end of 6 months. At the state and local level, those are a lot easier to fulfill, and we do those for clients all the time. And we even get copies of the winning proposal. So if there's a winner to the bid, when there's a winner to the bid, we get you a copy of the winning proposal so you can see like the org charts and all the people who work at that company.
And one last question. You had mentioned that you do this anonymously for contractors. What is the benefit of doing it anonymously as opposed to having your name on it?
So benefit number one is time management, and that is first. So there's a lot of follow-up involved in a FOIA request. A lot of times they just ignore it the first time and you have to keep following up. So there's a management benefit. Sometimes they become contentious where even though they're legally required to give you the information, they just don't want to do it. We have had it work in both directions at the state and local level in particular, where people will give us information that we're not legally entitled to. That happens. We have other situations where they will not give us information that we've been able to get hundreds of times from other people in the same state. So at that point, it becomes contentious, and we're not bidding on contracts. So it doesn't matter if they say no to us. We're going to keep pushing and even sometimes get lawyers involved to get the information we need.
Okay, I understand. So basically, you're not associated with a negative interaction.
Correct, because sometimes it can be a negative interaction if they don't want to give you the information.
No, that makes sense. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay with us, Susanna. Ray, do you have any follow-up questions based on this? And by the way, folks, I'll also say, although we've been covering federal topics exclusively up to this point, we can talk about state and local as well. So I'm just going to remind everyone that this is entirely audience-driven. Susanna and Ray have the floor. Carmela and I are going to keep answering questions, but please, at any point, raise your hand. I just want to see if we have some questions here. Looks like we do have some written questions. Robert, I do see your question. And so, Robert, let me read your question, and if I can answer it, or if we can answer it without you jumping on, we'll do that. So Robert says he's awaiting his certification as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. He would like to know how he can pitch himself as a subcontractor once he gets that certification. So yes, Carmela, can you talk a little bit about how federal contractors have subcontracting plans and the different ways that works for disabled vet businesses?
Yeah, so any award that's going to a large business, currently the dollar threshold is if it's anticipated to be $750,000 or more, or 1.5 million, I believe. You're gonna have to fact check that one for construction. They have to have a small business plan in place, and then those plans is percentages of those awards need to be subcontracted out to those those socioeconomic set-asides.
Yeah, and so Robert, what you're going to be doing is a lot of the same things that we just described to Susanna, but you're going to want to try to get your service disabled certification. And I know there's some log jams currently with that, or at least we've heard that there can be. You want to understand also that there are two different ways or two different calculations for subcontracted dollars. So it's 3% to disabled vets, and that's what's expected to be given out at the contract level. However, that 3% can be calculated one of two ways. It can either be 3% of subcontracted dollars or 3% of total dollars. And so if it's $1 million contract and the prime is saying or has said in writing that they're going to give out 10% of the work, you would be getting or potentially getting 3% of $100,000. If the solicitation is written up in a way where they want a percentage of revenue under the contract to be given out, it would be 3% of $1 million that is potentially available to you as a sub. So you just want to be conscious that there's the two different ways that they can do it in terms of what they're asking the primes to give out to subs. I would also, Robert, are you willing to come on with us? I see you are still here. Can you raise your hand if you're able to join us? Because I could engage with you a little bit. We could ask you a few questions. So raise your hand if you're in a position to join us with at least audio. Okay, we're going to bring you on, Robert, and if it works, great. Otherwise, we'll see what Carmela has to say about it. Let's bring Robert on. Okay, Robert declined to be promoted. So, Carmela, any additional thoughts about things that we might say to a disabled vet that wouldn't apply to others?
Yeah, I think, well, where's his question?
It would be under the answered section.
Answered. I think he was asking too, can I picture myself as a subcontractor? So he could reach out to the SBA and look into the protege mentorship opportunities, and work with a large business that way. Or he could also go to DSBS, that was the Dynamic Small Business Search website. And this is for anybody that's on the panels as well. You can always go there and search under NAICS codes, different businesses that are already a prime, and then reach out and network for your own business. Like, hey, I'm looking into subcontracting. Do you have any opportunities that you're going to be a prime on coming up for any solicitations that are open? I'd like to put my name in the hat as a subcontractor.
Boy, that Dynamic Small Business Search website, I'm glad you mentioned it. I've been on it many times. I'm always shocked that it never looks different than it looked 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's sort of amazing to me that they haven't developed that further, because clearly there's a big need for smaller businesses to find the prime opportunities.
It is
yeah,
kind of
so
hard to navigate. Like, I'm always like scrolling down, like, where do I put the cage code? Like,
talking
I
about
always miss it.
Talking about the picture behind me, it almost feels like, the website could have been built in the 80s.
It probably was.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, Robert, hopefully that helps. We're going to need you to maybe type another question if you have another question, or join us if you'd like to engage with us, because I think beyond that, it might just be difficult to go back and forth via text. So let's look for some more questions here. And while we're waiting for others to raise their hand, and by the way, please raise your hand if you have a question. Carmela, why don't you just talk to us a little bit about, like, what are your plans going into next year? Are you going to different events? Like, what is getting you excited about next year coming up?
Well, next year is this year now for me.
Oh, that's
It's already
right.
fiscal year 25, so I've already done it. I'm just excited to grow and help small businesses and coach and teach them. I'm looking for anything and everything under the sun that's a manufacturer of products and services, because at the end of the day, those are the best products and services at the highest quality for, taxpayer monies and for the government use. So that's basically what I'm excited about.
Well, and can you talk about, like, what does a typical engagement look like? Like, what kinds of things are you doing for people? And are there any prerequisites before someone should contact you? Like, they should only contact you if or after.
If they have a business already established, and if they know how to write a quote on the commercial side too, and a little bit established. If you're in business for about 2 years or 2+ years and have a good $2 to $5 million revenue, then that's who I'm typically looking for, because you understand what a business entails in the first place. And then obviously products and services that the government's going to purchase. I mean, I'm not looking for businesses selling lollipops, if that makes sense. So
It has to be something they're buying, right?
yeah, and honestly, I get on MyGovWatch and I like look to see if anything's open right away. And I use that as a selling point sometimes. Like, hey, there's something out right now. Look how quick and easy I found this on MyGovWatch.
Well, we appreciate your partnership with us, Carmela. And I guess, yeah, I mean, and this is for anyone who doesn't know, the federal fiscal year starts October 1st. So that's why Carmela is saying her year has already started. How often do you get people who are not sure whether they should be going for federal contracts or state and local?
Well, I'm looking for people looking for Department of Defense contracts. That's where my expertise is. But once I get them in and start talking to them, I often suggest, hey, you should look at state and local as well. I mean, this would be a good opportunity for you. So it's hit or miss. A lot of the people want the defense contracts, but everybody wants defense contracts too. But they're
It's interesting
open
to
it
bring
up.
that up.
There's so many opportunities.
I'm trying to remember, were you in last month's event?
I was, but I had a meeting that I had to get to.
Okay,
So
and,
logged off
this is
early.
on YouTube already. If anybody wants to check it out, if you just go to YouTube and type in MyGovWatch Live, you'll see November's event. But we actually put some charts in there that showed overall government contracting spending, defense spending, and then outsourced contracted dollar spending. And we showed the second Obama administration into Trump 1, into Biden, and we looked at it and we didn't really see major changes. I mean, the line just kept going up under Trump 1. Do you have any thoughts about like what will be changing, if anything? Does the overall arc change, or do you have an idea of what programs within defense might be changing?
I think cybersecurity is a big one. I think
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of money going into that for sure.
yeah, we had 3 people in the last 24 hours sign up for MyGovWatch who are looking to do cybersecurity. So we're seeing that on our end as well.
Those charts were very interesting though. I like them. They were an eye opener for me as well.
Yeah, a picture paints what is it? Picture is worth 1,000 words. So yeah,
I
we're
have a
just looking for
question.
more questions, folks. Ray, you're still with us.
I'm still with you. Carmela, yeah, so there are thousands of people that do what I do in the warehouse business. How does one catch the eye of someone that's on your side? I mean, how do we differentiate ourselves or stand out amongst everybody that does stuff like it's handwork? I mean, a lot of companies can do this kind of work, but how do we catch your eye or stand out?
Go to those industry days for
Okay.
sure. And then read through the solicitations as much as possible. And I'll give you a freebie here. The 52-212-1 and 2, the instructions to offers, and then the evaluation procedures. Those are your big things here. That's what you're looking for. You want to provide a quote to that solicitation in the exact manner that the contracting officer is telling you how to. Because if you don't, then we're just going to throw out your quote.
Okay.
Ray, can I ask you,
Determined as non-responsive is the technical term.
Okay.
how important is pricing when someone chooses your firm versus another one? How important is pricing relative to other things?
It's important, but it's never like it's never the most important because we have a lot of people who come from cheaper places, but they don't get the kind of care that we put into it. So for us, it's really important. If something comes in late and they're needing to get it out and we need to hire people over the weekend, we'll do it because we know how important it is for their business. So it's that sort of helping each other out thing. We're not like, too bad, we told you we need 5 days. Too bad. We're not like that. And maybe that's how we kind of stand out. We kind of give our customer service the front and forward. That's who we are, our customer service. And then the work itself, we do pretty well. But it's a lot of people can like stuff envelopes, but we will work with you to get your deadlines met.
Yeah, I would just echo what Carmela said in terms of the industry days and making sure that you're responding to exactly what they're asking for if you respond to a bid. Because there's just so many examples of qualified companies who could certainly do a contract are just simply disqualified. Any interesting disqualification stories or non-responsive stories, Carmela, without naming names? Like you've probably looked at a lot of RFP responses over the years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so there are so many times where we put, make sure like the offer shall email the solicitation with the subject line of the solicitation number, then title of it, and it shall be emailed to not only the contracting officer, but the contract specialist as well. So it has to be emailed to both. If you don't email both, you're done. Like I'm not getting the email. So I'm not gonna be able to see it then. And Because, the military, these guys are moving around. I was a civilian working as a contracting officer for the government, but my counterpart is military, so they could be deployed or whatever. So if you didn't email it to both of us and they're gone on a TDY, that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I threw people out. You're not listening to the instructions. You're not going to get the.
Yeah, yeah, and I would echo that by saying if there are 20 bids on a contract, Ray, the people on the other end, all things being equal, they'd rather read 6 to 10 responses rather than 20. So if they can disqualify 10 companies just for something procedural, they're happy to do that.
I've disqualified because their cover page is 2 pages instead of the 1, which I required.
Wow. It's great to know though.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, like Nick's saying, like if I get 20 proposals, I don't want to go through 20 proposals. I mean, I will if everybody listens and does it the right way, but vendors don't usually, or the offerers don't usually listen to, everything. So it's easier to go through 3 to 5 instead of 20.
So now let's say you're down to the 5 that have done it correctly. How do you make the decision that this company should get this bid? Or is it like these 5 companies work well, I'll give this one to this one and this next one to this one? Or
No, it doesn't work like that. You have to do the evaluation procedures. So for mine personally, it'd be like, I would go through and make sure everybody's responsive. If responsive, then like me as a contracting officer would look at price and I'd rank them in ascending order from lowest price to highest price. And then I would I'd rename it like company Z or company C. So the technical team doesn't know who the vendor's name is.
yeah,
And say, hey, look at the technical, are they technically responsive on this? Or meet the specifications of this, the statement of work of their performance work statement. And if they come back and say yes, then great. Then I'd check the past performance if that was part of the evaluation procedures. And then if that company was the one that met through the responsiveness, met through the specifications on the technical level, and had good, acceptable past performance, then I would go. If not, if there's something wrong with the specifications or past performance, then I go to the next one and then send it down to the technical team to review the next one.
gotcha. Are you finding that a lot of these contracts bids are coming from companies? Like, there's a lot of companies out there that are saying, hey, for $10,000, sign up with us, we'll do all that paperwork. Or what percentage comes from those companies that are experts in this field of writing bids versus a small business owner like ourselves?
Are you
Well,
referring to
yeah.
pass-throughs?
I'm referring to the bid paperwork. So is the paperwork coming from, I guess they just come to you as if they're the business then, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so you don't know who actually did the writing of it.
I do know.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Ray, this might help you as well. In a previous part of my career, I did exactly what you're describing. And my involvement as a consultant was transparent, meaning the government recipient had no knowledge that the bidder hired a consultant to put it together.
Gotcha.
I do know who the middlemen are, though. They're like 400% over the rest. They're the outliers.
Yeah.
I don't know
yeah.
how the middleman structure, like how it works, or if it
We
even
have
does.
people, Carmela, you'd be surprised. We have people on our site who are using our site specifically for that purpose.
Yeah.
And some of them must be successful because they keep doing it.
They must not be putting 400% on top of the subs, though.
Yeah. 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 And I guess there's an old expression, what is it? Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's from a movie, although I can't remember which one.
But there's a difference between like middleman and then the prime sub relationship. If you actually have a good relationship with your sub and you guys are working together, that works good. But like I said, the middleman aspect is they're not even trying to negotiate prices down with their subs. And they're just throwing, anywhere from 100 to 400% on top. And then they're outliers. They're just way too high.
Yeah.
So, folks, this event has gone from an hour in the past, and we're just bumping up against an hour, and it's gone to 90 minutes, and it's gone beyond 90 minutes, depending on like the level of interest people have in different things and in the questions people have. We always let this event sort of end organically. We're looking for some additional questions, and if there aren't any, that's okay. We will be doing this again next month. We have events scheduled throughout 2025. So let's just stop here and just see what additional questions there may be. And is there anyone else who is with us this afternoon or this morning, if you're on the West Coast, who would like to engage with us? Because now would be the perfect time to see one or two additional hands. Okay, Robert, I'm going to try to bring you in as a panelist, and if you decline, we're going to need you to type a question. And Ed, I see your question, your typed question, Ed, so we will answer that once we're finished with Robert here. So thank you for that question, Ed. Okay, and Robert, we just need we need your audio at least. We'd love your video, but at least your audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Hey, sorry about that. Yes, I'm sitting in a restaurant and I was a little concerned about background noise.
No worries, Robert. What do you do, and where is the restaurant?
It's in Hillside, Illinois.
Okay, and what business are you in?
So I retired a couple years ago, and I decided that I have about another 8-10 good years left in me. So I decided to do something with it. I also received a disability designation from the VA. So I figured I would turn that into an opportunity to do something for myself. So I started a small business. As I mentioned in my question, I've already applied for my certification as a disabled veteran. So doing the same thing with the state. But they asked me to go ahead and wait for the SBA certification because then they can fast track me for state and also some local certifications as well. But what I'm told is that with my designation, I'm a prime candidate to get set-asides. And I'm curious as to how I can get set-asides, or what the process is for identifying set-asides.
Yeah, and so I'll answer it from just a knowledge standpoint of like which bids are out there. That you can find out very, very easily on MyGovWatch.com. But you need to have a business focus. So what is your business focus?
So I'm looking to be something, for lack of a better term, like a jobber. Whereas I don't sell a specific product. What I would look to do is see if there's set-asides out there and see if it's a product that I could source and provide. And strictly, I'm not looking to do a $20 million business. I'm looking to sustain myself, and if it grows to be a really large business, that would be great as well. But I'm a post-retirement person looking to stay busy and also make some money. So a smaller scale set-aside type thing, whereas I could look out, potentially see a contract and say, okay, that's something I can do without needing too many people and too many resources. Like I don't want to store product, or I don't want to have to maintain a warehouse, things like that. And so about 12 years ago, I was doing the same thing with the state of Illinois. I just find a contract, say for rock salt. I'd find a supplier, I'd buy the rock salt. I'd mark it up, send an invoice to the state would pay me. I'd take my piece out, and then I'd pay the supplier. That's the kind of thing I'm looking to do again.
Yeah, and this goes back to sort of the middleman concept we were talking about a few minutes ago. I would just say this, and Carmela, maybe you can add on to it. I would use what I have to get what I want. And what I mean by that is I would go to my network of contacts. Do you know business owners? Do you know people who provide chemicals like rock salt? I would go to my network of people and say, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. Who do you know, or who do I know that is looking to get into government who just doesn't have time to do it? And I would start with just like who you know and who they know, and try to identify a handful of companies that might like to partner with you to sell into government where they don't have the resources to do it or the time. And that's where I would recommend you start, is to try to find like some warm leads for companies that could be suppliers for different things and then go try to find those deals rather than trying to find the deals and then trying to find the suppliers second.
So basically pitching myself as a sub to some primes and convincing them that we could both benefit each other.
And you would be a prime at that point, right? Because you would be bidding on the contract as a service disabled veteran owned business. And only because you have that certification, you would be competing for a set aside and only you can bid on it. And your supplier doesn't have that certification, so they would be supplying you. So you would be the prime, not the sub.
Okay, so one bit of a clarification, because I'm told with set asides, there are no bid set asides where you don't have to bid. Is that not true?
Carmela, do you want to talk about some of the different purchasing thresholds where there must be a solicitation and all the way down to the micro purchases? Like, have you been involved in the different thresholds?
Yeah, so anything that's expected to be over $25,000 needs to be posted on, it's called the government-wide point of entry, which is SAM.gov. But anything that is expected to be over $250,000, the contracting officer shall first give consideration to the socioeconomic set aside. So that's your service disabled, 8A, subzones, women owned. But what you're asking is if you don't have to bid on it, you're talking about a sole source set aside directly to your small disadvantaged veteran-owned small business, where you're not competing. You still have to provide a proposal or a quote, depending on if it's an RFQ or RFP. But did that answer your question?
Yes, I think you did. Yes.
But those are new. So those sole source set asides, you'd really have to, like, the technical team would have to know your business or what you're doing. Like the Ed's question in the chat, kind of like he would have to go find those technical teams via those industry days. So you would have to go and find those industry days and kind of like niche down what you're going to sell to the government and via whatever subcontractors you end up doing business with and having that relationship with. And then seek out those opportunities that way.
And Carmela, isn't it also true that the sole source needs a justification for why it's sole sourced?
Not necessarily if it's the socioeconomic set aside. The justification that we do is we don't expect to receive 2 or more in that set aside under that NAICS code.
Okay, so if he's selling rock salt, for example, and you don't expect to get 2 or more bids
from a service disabled, and it's over $250,000, and it's an underutilized NAICS code.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, I can go directly. I can call them up and be like, "Hey, are you willing to provide me a quote for this?" And are you willing to negotiate?
Yeah, Robert, I would really start with my network of people I know in business, or people you know and people they know. Right? I would ask my network to go to their networks and say, who can I get in touch with that wants to sell to government that is not doing it yet? And start there, because you want to have relationships with your suppliers. And I think, you know, I think you could have some success building the supplier relationships first.
Okay, one other point of clarification. I know you mentioned 3% for disabled vets, and you were saying that could be 3% of the subcontracted dollars or 3% of the total dollars. My understanding was that the mandate was for 5% as opposed to 3%, and that historically it's never exceeded about 2.5%. So it was suggesting to me that there's a window there of 2.5% that the government is mandated to do, but I was assuming that it's not happening because there were not enough people like myself who were looking to fill that 5%, that they didn't have people enough of disabled veterans or minority businesses to meet that 5% mandate.
So Carmela, are you aware, and this is a question, have you heard that the 3% has become 5%?
No.
Okay.
I
got that off of SBA.gov.
Maybe it is a thing. Maybe
Yeah,
the goals increase
maybe,
for FY25 that we were talking
Well,
about?
I wasn't specific to a year, but because I got the SAM.gov certification also, And I think it was while I was doing the SAM.gov certification that I came across that.
And I'm just doing a search while we're talking.
Yeah.
It's been 3% for years.
5%?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like they're increasing it. It looks like they're increasing it. So I would not look at the overall amount, Robert, because I think what's probably happening is since they are increasing it, there's probably a lot of disabled vet firms who want to get a piece of that action. And 2% of total government spending is tens of billions of dollars, right? I would still be looking, I would not be looking at it overall. I would be looking at what are the specific products or services where I have supplier relationships and focus on those. But it is good if they are increasing it to 5%, that does bode well for you, but I would still start with making relationships with suppliers and maybe using USA Spending to identify industries that may seem underserved. And there are ways to do that if you spend some time on usaspending.gov.
So the MyGovWatch, and what I'm asking you is whether or not this is an entity that can get me from where I am to where I'm trying to be. My background is finance. I worked in FP&A. I did multiple years at Pepsi and other businesses. So I don't have a network of suppliers. This is, for lack of a better term, a total change of industry. So I don't have, former contacts that I can go back to, because the kind of work that I was doing did not lend itself to this. It was CPG organizations.
You said CPG?
Yes, consumer products.
Okay. So MyGovWatch is a subscription-based service that will send you leads for active solicitations.
Okay.
So for example, you might hear about a large contract involving roads and road maintenance, maybe at a military base, and there might be a subcontracting component where they need someone to supply rock salt. And I'm just going to stay with that example.
Yeah.
For $59.99 per month, let's just say if you're using the site in your region, you would hear about those leads and use our site as a jumping off point to know that those contracting initiatives are out there, to then go figure out how you can contact people who are winning those contracts through research. So it's your jumping off point for knowing what is the government buying today. It's a subscription information service. It's not a consulting service, right? The consulting is here in MyGovWatch Live.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. And so, Robert, stay with us if you have a follow-up question. We have one more question from Ed. And Ed's question is, what specific steps can we take to improve our positioning and win rate when responding to government RFPs, particularly in highly competitive PCB manufacturing for rigid flex, and flex boards? That's super specific, Ed. And I think the best answer I can give you there is this is where the open records requests would give you the exact answer that you're looking for. And so when we do an open records request through MyGovWatch, we always ask for a copy of the contract that's signed, a list of the bidders, any documents that show relative evaluations of the bidders, and a copy of the winning proposal. And we can easily add, and we often do add, a copy of all proposals. So by doing open records requests, whether you do them through our site or do them yourself, for those contracting initiatives, you can see why the government is picking those vendors for those contracts and identify for yourself why you think company A received this contract and company B received the other contract. So if you're at that point, if you use open records to fill in the knowledge gap, you're not speculating as to what you need to do. You know exactly what you need to do. And that information is obtainable through open records requests, although we would have to use our site to figure out like which contracts would be close enough to what you're looking for so that the information would be highly relevant. Carmela, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't, but PCB manufacturing is pretty, Ed, have you looked into like the DOE national laboratories at all? I don't know if you can.
And so, Ed, I'm going to give you, I'm going to promote you, and you can decline it, but the only way we'd be able to go further with this is if you join us live. and we'll just give Ed a moment. And I'm not even familiar with the acronym PCB, Carmela. It sounds like you may be.
PCB, it's no, I'm not familiar with it. Well, I'm familiar with it. I don't know what it stands for.
Okay.
But it's super specific. Printed circuit boards, that's right.
Printed
Yeah.
circuit board.
Yeah, I mean, check out the national laboratories
Yeah, and
for
Ed,
that type of thing. And go to their vendor days, figure out when their vendor days are, and talk to the technical teams. If he's willing to give you, I don't know if he can just give you an answer like his UEI. Let me know what his UEI is.
yeah.
See if
So
I got anything out right now, because
I would
those
say,
are pretty.
Ed, if you're not in a place where you can join us, let's do this. I'm going to drop my email address in the chat, and I'm going to drop my cell phone number in the chat. And if you contact me, we can hop on a Zoom and we can, or even just a phone call, and I can pull a report of contracts where they're buying what you're selling, and then you can just have that list. And if you decide to sign up for MyGovWatch, then you can engage us to do the open records request. But at a minimum, I'm happy to just give you like a list of things like that if you decide to do your own open records requests. And it sounds like Ed has a loud background, so that's no problem. Let me just put in my email address. Okay, so I'm putting in my personal cell phone number as well, so that's in there. Okay. All right, let's just see if Robert, do you have any final questions? And is there anyone else in the audience that may have a final question before we sort of wrap things up? Okay, Carmela, any parting thoughts, ideas, events you're going to be at, anything that you'd like to mention?
No, I don't have any events scheduled yet because I'm basically a single mom right now while my husband's still in Idaho until all that happens. But
Well, if he's going to be
anything comes
deployed,
up, I'll let you know.
he's going to be deployed. Let it be Idaho.
Well, no, he's retiring, so we're trying to transition into the real world now, the civilian side.
All right, folks. Robert, any parting thoughts?
No, but thank you very much.
All right, folks, that'll do it for today's edition of MyGovWatch Live. Remember, anyone who has asked or submitted a question or participated in this session in any way qualifies for a 30-day free trial. If you sign up, I'll see your name. We'll go back and forth. We'll extend it out to 30 days. Remember, if you're not already a subscriber, start your free 14-day trial of MyGovWatch today. If you want to win more government contracts for less, you'll be glad you did. Thanks, folks. Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.